The Alpha King betrayed his Luna, then lost his wolf, the moment she walked away forever. Sarah made the coffee at 6 in the morning, same as every day for 6 years. Not because anyone asked her to, not because it was her job, but because Damien liked it ready when he came downstairs, and she liked being the one who made it ready. And for a long time those two things felt like the same thing. She stood at the counter in her robe, watching the coffee drip into the pot, and thought about nothing in particular. The birds outside were loud, the kitchen smelled like dark roast and dish soap. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly the way it always was. She did not know that downstairs was the last place the word always applied to her life. Damien came into the kitchen at 6:15, the way he always did, wearing the gray shirt she had bought him 2 Christmases ago. He kissed her on the top of her head. She handed him his mug. He looked at his phone. She noticed he turned it slightly away from her when he looked at it. She noticed. She did not say anything. She put the thought in a drawer inside herself, the way she had learned to put many small things, and she went upstairs to get dressed. His name was Damien Kael, and he was the kind of man that a room noticed. Not because he was loud, he was never loud, but because he had the quality of someone who had already decided the outcome of every situation before he walked into it. He ran a construction company that now stretched across 3 counties. He had built it from 1 truck and 1 employee, which was himself, and he was proudest of that, prouder than any contract or any building. He had also, 6 years ago, met Seraphine Voss at a hardware store on a Wednesday afternoon, and had decided, in the time it took her to reach past him for a box of nails, that she was the one. He had been right about her. He had simply, at some point, forgotten that he knew that. Sarah was not the kind of woman who took up space loudly. She was the kind of woman who, quietly and without announcement, made every space better. She remembered how people took their coffee. She noticed when a room felt off and fixed it before anyone else registered the problem. She had a way of listening that made people feel, for the duration of the conversation, that they were the most interesting person on earth. She had listened to Damien for 6 years. She had learned him the way you learn a house you live in, where the floors creak, where the light falls in the afternoon, which windows stick in the rain. She thought he had been learning her the same way. Her name was Mira Cole, and she came into Damien's life through a real estate deal in October. She was 27, and clear-eyed and unburdened by anything, the way people are unburdened when they haven't yet had to carry much. She was smart, and she was funny, in a quick, surface way that felt like sunlight, warm and bright, and not particularly deep. Damien told himself the meetings were about the property. There were many meetings. Sarah noticed the changes the way a person notices the season shifting, not in a single moment, but in accumulation. The dinners he rescheduled. She understood. He was busy. The phone, face down on the table. She understood. Work was stressful. The laugh she heard through the study door one evening, muffled, directed at a screen, a laugh she hadn't heard in almost 2 years, loose and young and unguarded. She stood in the hallway and listened to it like someone listening to a song they used to know. She went to bed. She told herself she was imagining things. She was not imagining things. 6 weeks into what Damien was calling nothing, Sarah asked him directly. They were in the kitchen after dinner. She was washing the pan, and she turned off the water, and dried her hands, and she looked at him and said, "Is there something you need to tell me?" He looked at her. He said, "No. What are you talking about?" She studied his face, the way she had studied it for 6 years. She had learned every version of it, the tired version, the proud version, the version he wore when he was trying not to laugh. She knew this version too. She had hoped she would never see it. "Okay," she said. She turned the water back on. She finished the dishes. She went to bed and lay in the dark for 4 hours and listened to him breathe beside her, and thought about the hardware store, 6 years ago, and the box of nails, and the way he had looked at her like she was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. The photograph was on a public social media page. A birthday dinner, white tablecloth, candles. Damien in the navy jacket she had helped him pick out. His hand on the small of Mira Cole's back in the particular way of a man who has already, privately, made a decision. The caption said, "Best birthday. Thank you for making it special." Sarah read it twice. Then she put her phone face down on the counter, screen against the surface, the way she had seen him do it, and understood for the first time what that gesture meant. She finished folding the laundry that was sitting in the basket by the couch. She matched the socks. She stacked the towels in the linen closet, in the order she always stacked them, largest to smallest. She made tea she did not drink. She sat at the kitchen table she had found at a second-hand market and refinished herself, and she folded her hands on its surface and sat very still, and the house was quiet around her, and she did not cry, not yet. Later she would cry, in the shower, with the water running, in the way that women who have held everything together cry when they finally allow themselves to fall apart, completely and without audience. But first she sat still. She was very good at sitting still. The confrontation was not what people imagine when they imagine confrontations. There was no shouting. There were no thrown things. Sarah had never been that kind of person, and she was especially not going to become that kind of person now. In the house she had made a home with her own 2 hands, and 6 years of quiet love. She waited until Sunday morning. She let him pour his coffee. She let him sit down. And then she told him what she knew, in the specific and complete way of a woman who has had several days to make sure she had all the information before she opened her mouth. Damien put his mug down. He said her name once. She said, "I'm not asking for an explanation. I'm asking for the truth. You owe me that much." He gave it to her. He used words like, complicated, and, I didn't plan for this, and, it just happened. He said she deserved better. He said he was sorry. She listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she sat with the silence for a moment, the way she always sat with things before she responded, and then she said, "I know." She stood up. "Goodbye, Damien." She walked out of the kitchen, past the coffee maker she had bought because his old one was too complicated and she wanted his mornings to be easy, past the hooks by the door she had installed herself because he could never find his keys, out the front door, which closed quietly behind her because Sarah had never in her life slammed a door. She did not look back. He thought she would call. She did not call. He sent messages. She read them. Every single one. The small word "read" appeared beneath each one like a verdict, and he sat and stared at it, and understood, in a way he had not understood anything in some time, what it felt like to be on the receiving end of silence from a person who had previously always had time for you. The first week was disorienting in ways he had not anticipated. He went to make coffee on Monday morning, and stood in front of the machine, and realized he did not know how to work it. Not because he was incapable, but because he had not made coffee in 6 years. She had made it. Every morning. He had never once thought about it, never once said thank you for this specific thing, had in fact never registered it as a thing at all, only as a given, only as part of the structure of mornings, the way a person doesn't think about the floor until it isn't there. He stood in front of the coffee machine for a long time. Then he sat down on the kitchen floor. He sat there for 11 minutes. He knew because he looked at his watch when he sat down, and looked at it again when he stood up, and he could not have explained why he timed it, except that some part of him needed to know how long a man like him could stay down. 11 minutes. He stood up. He figured out the coffee machine. It took him another 10 minutes, and the coffee was not good, but he drank it. She answered the phone once. He called on a Thursday, 3 weeks after she left, and she answered because she had decided she would give him one conversation, and then she would be done with conversations. He said he had made a mistake. She said she knew. He said he wanted to fix it. She said, "Damien, you wanted her. You had me. Those two things aren't the same. They were never the same." He started to say something else. She said, "Take care of yourself." She ended the call. She sat for a moment with her phone in her hand and felt, beneath the sadness, something else. Something smaller and steadier, like a pilot light. She didn't have a name for it yet. Later she would understand it was the first indication that she was going to be okay. His business did not collapse. That would be too simple a consequence, and life is rarely that simple. But it strained. Not because she had handled anything operational. She hadn't. She had her own work, her own career, her own life that she had maintained as a separate thing with its own weight and shape. She had always been careful about that. But the parts of Damien that worked, the early mornings, the discipline, the ability to hold a long vision, and not flinch away from the hard parts of it, those parts had been built in her proximity. She had been the thing that steadied him, not by doing his work, but by being the constant around which everything else could move. You don't know what stabilizes a system until the stabilizing element is gone. His second-in-command asked him twice in 1 week if he was all right. Both times he said yes. Both times the man looked at him the way people look at someone who is clearly not telling the truth, but whose truth is not theirs to demand. Mira was not a bad person. He sat across from her at dinner in December, 2 months after Sarah left, and understood that with complete clarity. Mira was warm and funny and capable, and had done nothing wrong except exist in a way that he had allowed to pull him off course. But he looked at her across the white tablecloth and candles, and he felt nothing he could build anything on, something bright and clean and without roots, the kind of feeling that is satisfying the way a window display is satisfying, beautiful from outside, empty when you walk through the door. He ended it that night. She cried. He drove home alone. He sat in the parking lot of his own house and understood, in the particular way that men who have always been certain understand the feeling of being wrong, slowly, and with great resistance, and then all at once. He had left something real for something that felt exciting because it was new. New things always feel exciting. They are always just new things. Sarah's apartment was small and entirely hers. She painted the walls herself. She chose a color called soft clay, which was neither entirely orange nor entirely brown, and which made the evening light in the living room feel like the inside of something warm. She put up shelves. She filled them with books she had been meaning to read, and plants she was determined not to kill, and 2 photographs, one of her mother, one of her best friend, laughing at something off camera. None of Damien. Not because she hated him. She had decided quite deliberately that she was not going to hate him. Hatred is weight, and she had set down enough weight. She missed him, sometimes, in the specific and physical way of someone missing a habit, the presence of another body in a space, the rhythm of another person's morning. She missed the version of him that used to look at her like she was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. But she had begun to understand something, in the quiet of her own apartment, that she had not understood before. She had built a great deal of love into his life. The hooks by the door, the coffee maker tuned to his preference, the mornings, the dinners, the listening. She had built all of that with care and intention and real feeling, and she had done it because she wanted to, and that was true, and it was good. But she had made the mistake of measuring her own worth by whether he received it well. She had been extraordinary. He had stopped paying attention. Those were 2 separate facts, and only one of them said anything about her. She made her own coffee now, the complicated kind, the kind that required effort and a small amount of technical knowledge, the kind she had always wanted and never bought because she was always buying things calibrated to someone else's ease. It was, she thought, very good coffee. Damien drove past the park where she used to run on Sunday mornings, once, in February. He didn't stop. He didn't call. He had come to understand that some doors, when they close, are not locked against you as punishment. They are simply closed. She was not hiding from him, or holding something over him, or waiting for him to find the right combination of words. She had simply built a door, and walked through it, and closed it behind her, and the door faced the direction of her future, not his. The part of him that had known she was worth keeping, that quick, instinctive part that had recognized her in a hardware store on a Wednesday and said, "Her, it's her," was very quiet now. Not gone. He would not be dramatic enough to say gone. But quiet in the way a compass goes quiet when you've been walking the wrong direction long enough that it stops bothering to tell you. He was trying to find his way back to himself. He did not know yet if that was possible. She, in her clay-colored apartment with her complicated coffee and her plants she was keeping alive, was not waiting to find out. She was already somewhere else, somewhere forward, somewhere entirely her own.